Hi, this is Ben Green from The Athletic FC. The podcast you're about to listen to is brought to you by Hotels.com. As a Hotels.com member, you save up to 20% on hundreds of thousands of hotels and earn rewards on every single stay, which means the trips you're taking now help pay for the ones you're already dreaming about. And unlike some other places, there are no blackout dates, so when you want to travel, your rewards are ready to go. So the next time you're planning a work trip or a getaway, make sure to book it at Hotels.com and start earning rewards. Hotels.com. It's all in the name.
After 18 regular rounds, 2 knockout games, and almost 12 months, we are somehow back exactly where we were. As Leinster versus Bulls is set to yet again be the URC final following 2 pulsating, closely fought semi-finals, and an eventuality that some of us predicted ages ago. Anyway, we're going to be breaking down both games, including insight from the grounds themselves, in this week's episode of the URC Rewind. Let's start the show. Hello, welcome back to the URC Rewind. I am joined by the full panel of guests this evening: Irish Adam, South African Mohammed, and Scottish Ethan. Good evening, gents.
Good evening.
I, for the sake of this podcast, am Welsh Hugh, and I am butter neutral in this evening's conversation. Adam is biased, but not in the way that you might expect.
No comment.
Maybe
No
in
comment.
the way that you do expect. Anyway, as always, gents, because we don't want to be here forever and ever and ever, we shall make a prompt start to the show and talk about Glasgow versus the Bulls. Now, before we talk about the game itself and the events on the field, Ethan, you were there. You were there. So tell us about your day out in Scottish Gas Murrayfield. 18,000 people there, according to the URC app. A decent effort on a week's notice, I feel.
Yeah, it was quite crazy in how busy the train was, that the train was just absolutely hoaching, full of Glasgow fans and people wearing Scotland shirts. And then when we got to Murrayfield, it was an interesting ratio of the Scotland to Glasgow shirts, that there were a lot more people wearing Scotland shirts than you'd expect. So it was good that quite a lot of Edinburgh fans, and probably, would you just say neutral Scotland rugby fans? So yeah, it was a great turnout on a week's notice. It felt weird being in the bottom of Murrayfield, as it wasn't like the full circle either. It was kind of like two like parallel, because the areas behind the posts didn't have any seats, because the one, I know, which was really, they had like a big, I think it was a Glasgow shirt just like stretched out across all the seats and behind one of the posts, but the other ones didn't have a shirt, and I don't know why one did but the other one didn't. Like, I have no idea, but no, the atmosphere was great. Where I was sitting right behind, on the side where, you know, the smoke things were, like smoke,
Machines.
yeah, smoke machines, and it was. I was wearing my sunglasses just because I found it easier to see. And yeah, it was it was quite choking for the first like 5 minutes. And it just felt like matches as well, which is, it's quite a nice smell, but it was a bit, if you're on the pitch, it would probably be a bit harder to see through it. But no, the atmosphere was fantastic. Despite the result, which we will get to, the all the Glasgow fans, like the amount of times you heard "We Are Warriors" or Glasgow sort of chanting and stuff, it was phenomenal. Just a shame it wasn't our day. But congrats to the Bulls, which I have to say before I get into some of the other stuff I might say later on.
Well, shout out also to Policeman Ben, our old friend and co-host, who was also there, had a nice day with his dad, we understand. So let's talk about the match itself. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The best rivalry in the URC between Glasgow and the Bulls, 2 teams who bring the best out of each other and always produce a cracking match. Finished a 1-point margin, 21 points to 22. It could have been more, but for reasons we should come on to later. But Glasgow, that 21 was all scored within the first 25 minutes. And it went on. And I don't know, who do I want to go to first? Mohammed, the tradition is that we go to the winners first. So you, as the voice of South Africa on this podcast, what did you think of the Bulls' performance in this game?
I was incredibly pleased. Look, it was a tight game. Glasgow started much better, but the Bulls ended much superior. Um, Look, it was back and forth. Could have really gone either way in that second half. This is fantastic rivalry. These teams have faced each other this season three times, and of course, this is revenge for the Bulls for having lost not a final, not a semi-final, but a final in Pretoria. So for the Bulls to have a short turnaround, a very physical match last week in Pretoria against Munster, and then to fly over, not to Glasgow, unfortunately, but to Murrayfield, and get this result. They looked a bit indifferent in the first half, and Glasgow actually looked like Glasgow from last week in the second half against Connacht, where they were incredibly clinical. But it was weird. It's like the teams were swapping roles as the
Yeah.
Bulls found their feet in the game. Glasgow seemed to make some mistakes, maybe forced by some of the Bulls' excellent defensive line and stuff like that. So, despite the miss kicks, thankfully they didn't come back to haunt us. And like certain players stood up. I know Kenyon Moody went off for concussion. He didn't necessarily have the best game, but he still, I feel like he had a good game. And his replacement, Stedman Gans, is somebody who, like, Bulls have a lot of these players, Stedman Gans, Sergel Peterson, Devin Williams, Oaks, who don't necessarily play a ton, but then when they do get a chance, they actually do step up. So shout out to
I
him.
thought that Stedman
Um,
Kranz was fantastic in this game.
Yeah, to the point that he played so well, to the point that the TV broadcast mistakenly put Catley Arendt's name underneath him. That's how well he was playing. So, I mean, Hans is like a player I've been keeping an eye on for a while. Silvino Jacobs as well. He played well on the wing. Another
He
player who
did.
doesn't necessarily get a ton of game time. Silvino Jacobs to me is also like very interesting because, I mean, he was a schools rugby superstar, played school rugby in Paarl, where most really, really highly rated South African players play, although across the country, really. And for such a portly fellow, he still has the acceleration of the Millennium Falcon. So, I mean, he played well, attacking and defensively. Um, Van Staden came on and he made one silly mistake, but overall, like in the last game in the Champions Cup when Van Staden came on, he seemed to want to punch people as opposed to like just get the result on the field. So look, going into this game on the Friday, bit of an animal preview show, I said that the Bulls had a slightly better chance than the Stormers playing away and getting a result. And now I think the Bulls have a slightly better chance as well in the final, considering it's not immediately next week.
Well, there's so much I want to talk about from this game. There's so many questions that I have, especially looking into next week. And sticking with you, Mohammed, where, in your opinion, did the Bulls win this? Because on 25 minutes, it looked like it could turn ugly.
Yeah, because on the group chat, I just posted ellipses because I thought it's like game over. I was like, I wish this would be like a close game as we predicted. I think they had better composure in the second half. I think they they probably had a game plan and somehow it just fell into place quite well and they stuck to it. Um, Defensively, they were solid. They look. I was sort of like getting a bit upset towards the end where they just kept kicking for balls and Andre Pollard kept missing because the whole idea there is like if the guy misses one, he misses two, and then once you get penalties after that, you're not going to keep milking penalties. Once you get penalties after that, then maybe go for the corner. Don't put so much emphasis on, even though Andre Pollard is known for like being a clutch kicker. But Andre Pollard is obviously, we can all see he's a good player, but he's not peak Andre Pollard anymore.
So,
Um,
according to himself in the post-match presser,
yeah.
the call from the coach's box was to go to the corner, and he overruled them and went for the three and missed three times.
Well, yeah, if you win two World Cups on the bounce, maybe you can overrule your teammates, but that might have come back to haunt them. Yeah, I feel like the Bulls had better composure in the second half, and then Glasgow are a really, really good team. They're not the team that toured South Africa. People thinking, oh, Glasgow are done because they didn't pick up any wins on that two-match tours. I was like, no, they're going to play at home again. They're going to get people back. They didn't even have Hugh Jones. He was sitting next to policeman Ben in the stands, and they were still executed. But it was so weird because they looked so composed last week. They looked like they'd been there before. I wonder, and we can ask Ethan this now. I wonder, like, how much did the shift in venue hurt them?
I feel it shouldn't really. I think it was more for Glasgow themselves. They probably wouldn't have thought too much about it because most of them play there fairly regularly. I think it was more. Did I say this last week that for the Bulls it was probably more of a leveler? in that a lot of them will have played there before and have very good memories of winning at Murrayfield. Um, so I think for Glasgow, that shouldn't have really been a factor. Because I think atmosphere-wise, it wasn't that different. I think that's why they got everyone on the lower one to try and mimic the Scotsman atmosphere of how close you are at Scotsman to the pitch.
Hmm.
Uh, but no, I think really for Glasgow, it was kind of in my head, the decline was really when the Kyle Rowe weird knock-on decision that from what I saw, it didn't look like a knock-on. It was, I want to say Aaron's made like a really good try-saving tackle on Kyle Rowe. And then that was decided as a knock-on, but it didn't look like he ever let go of the ball.
Hmm.
And we were all really confused. So in my head, that's kind of where the momentum started to shift. And then it was really solidified when the Bulls bench came on.
That's the question I've been building to the Bulls bench. That because I posted on Blue I posted on Blue Sky about the building to the Bulls bench, and I said the Bulls need to make this game about the benches. And when they were 21-3 down, it wasn't. And then they made it about that. And I really felt that the Bulls bench, these words are starting to lose their meaning, was better. the Bulls bench was better. And
Say that 3 times.
yeah, I know. the and that was kind of it. And this, I don't know if I want to go there yet, but and Ethan, I don't want to depress you or anything, but
Oh, it's okay. I'm already depressed. It's fine.
is it over now for Glasgow? Because it's such a cruel way to end their season. And obviously
Mhm.
George Horn pulled out before the kickoff. And
Yeah.
Franco's going to be asked to go with a smaller and, let's be honest, worse squad next season. Was this the last rodeo? Was this the last dance?
I think you can never truly say, is it never say die? I think this was probably the best chance Glasgow have had in a very long time, and quite possibly the best chance they will have in the future. Considering how well they have played all season. That, pardon me, with the performance in the Champions Cup, and then throughout the whole season generally in the URC, to go out in a whimper in the Champions Cup. And then here, I don't know if you describe it as a whimper, but it was just more the second half, Glasgow couldn't do anything. Um, so I think I was thinking about this. I don't know whether it's just kind of the end of I don't know, Franco phase one and the beginning of the next cycle that, we've lost Hugh Jones, Johnny Matthews, Vailani, Henker, Jordan over this season and the last season. So whether now Franco's going to have to then kind of rebuild that depth, but in the long term, um, you'll have those guys like your Ewan Ferries, your Yari Agantebejis, Alex Samuel and Alex Craig are both quite young.
Hmm.
I think they're both under 24, I want to say. Maybe even both under 23. Um, and then Dan Lancaster and Roy Darge, they're both 25. They've got tons of time left in them. So I do wonder whether we just have to grit our teeth for a bit and then see maybe what year is this 2026? End of 2027, 2028. Maybe that's when those fruits maybe start to blossom. Or
And then he'll be
the bear.
Scotland coach.
Yeah, exactly. This will be Clark Laidlaw's Glasgow we'll be looking at. Or Pete Murchie's Glasgow. But yeah, it's the sort of thing that I have been thinking about. Same with Edinburgh. I think with Edinburgh and Glasgow, they are probably going through a similar thing at the moment in that the old guard is kind of being phased out, whether by
Hmm.
choice or just it's just that time to go sort of thing. But I think for Glasgow, it's kind of slightly, would you describe it as a bit more graceful in a way that, like, oh, well, they could have had one last go Whereas for Edinburgh, a lot of them left quite abruptly in some cases for like Ben Healy and stuff. And then it's kind of just like, well, we're at the bottom. We've got to do something sort of thing. Whereas Glasgow, it's a bit more, we've consistently been top four for the last few years and things. So it's now, this might get not quite ugly, but we'll be lucky to make it top four, I think. Maybe even top six next year.
I think you'll do well to get top. As we record today, despite the fact that you finished top, and by the way, the URC continuing the record of the team who finishes top, not winning it. But I think that you'll do well to get top four. I think the biggest thing is Franco. I think the best thing about Glasgow is Franco. But he can only, if he's got lesser tools, then it is what it is. Adam, as a neutral, what did you make of the game?
I thought it was a really good game. It was one of those games as a neutral, you sort of not exactly. I would have wanted the result to go a different way. I did think that Glasgow, as we sort of mentioned in the first half, did play really well. I mentioned before the podcast even was on, it was like Dan Lancaster, podcast favorite, was almost playing like Dan Carter when the yellow card was on for the Bulls. It was one of those that I was just like, oh, is this what Finn Russell wants to play like as well? But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like as a neutral as well, like seeing some of the hits that went down, seeing Andre Pollard miss so many times, and one like Ethan, you need to have like some type of photo at the game and you have it framed as well, like just so like this is where it was. But yeah, it was mental. I thought there was parts of the game, particularly I think it was Pollard's last two kicks, and I was sort of going, like, surely you can't miss this one. Surely they're just going to dead and bury the game now. And it was the one on the 50-meter line. I don't know if that was the last one or if the one just before last, just on the 50-meter line. And I just went and I went, how? It was one of those that I thought like Andre Pollard should have, could have. And I think it's so weird. Like you could probably pull up a stat showing, I don't know about this season, but there seems to be so many missed kicks. Like I'm always talking about how games are lost by missed kicks. This game was won by missed kicks. But yeah, it was bizarre, and fair play to the Bulls. They have hit form at such a spectacular time.
They have, and we'll come on to that maybe towards the end of the show. But a question now for all of you, and I guess Mohammed, I'll get you to lead. Is Ackers already a success?
I would say yes. If I speak to a lot of the Bulls supporters, they were telling me in person and online that, oh, well, we're going to give him the season to bed in. He had to change his coaching staff midway because he inherited a coaching staff. I don't know why he didn't insist on getting like a fresh start. And yeah, I've always been a Ackerman sort of acolyte type thing. He played for the Sharks back in the day. Um, it was like quite a bruising forward. And then I thought that when he took over at the Lions, that Lions would like be a forward orientated team, but they were actually very dynamic. And then he sort of went overseas and first in the Prem and then in Japan and sort of further grew his coaching experience. And yeah, I was actually quite keen on him coming back to the Sharks to coach, because when he left the Lions, I was like, fantastic. He'll go overseas and he'll come back to us. Why? Because he used to play for us. And because I felt that with Plum leaving and Plum being New Zealand, if you get someone in who's like the complete opposite of Plum, go from a New Zealand guy to like an Afrikaans type voice, and then it will like refresh the whole environment. But a lot of Afrikaans guys like to go to the Bulls because it's like a very Afrikaans environment. Like you'd rather go to Bulls than sort of the Cheetahs, which was a very Afrikaans environment, and he's comfortable there, and he was able to bring in his own people mid season, and he looks like he's having fun now. And you have the resources of the Bulls because they might not purchase the most eye-catching players already in the Springboks. They do one or two, but they get guys overseas who are really good who are not in the Springbok setup or on the fringes, or they get like really blue chip high school prospects. Like, I mean, Francois Kloppers was like a big deal coming out of high school into the Sharks youth system, and then they stole him. So yeah, I don't support the Bulls, but I'll be cheering for them in 2 weeks' time. But I feel like Ackerman's done fantastic with what he's built, and it's very nice seeing sort of like the progress. So what I want to see next season is they do well in the URC and in the Champions Cup.
What about Adam, Ethan? Because some people will say that he's only so far equaled what Jake White did, with arguably a better squad.
Yeah, but as Mohammed said, he went in and sort of brought in his own staff midway through the season. It's been spectacular how form can change around in that mid-season, especially like when you consider the URC and how close it's been anyway. The fact that they've went to Scotland, yes, it was Edinburgh, not Glasgow, but they're close in theory. Bulls had to travel a lot longer for it. It's just spectacular. Like the fact that they've taken apart this very good Glasgow team and they kept it within a point for most of the game as well. Like we have to consider how they kept it within a point for most of the game and also made sure that Glasgow were not really knocking on any type of door, not even getting into drop goal places as well. I think, as you said, he's equaled last year. However, I think it's done in a more spectacular way considering the circumstances.
Ethan, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Adam there, and I kind of want to build on it in the sense of Ackerman has the changing room, in that
Mm,
obviously Jake White very famously lost the changing room, and that it was quite interesting talking about how they managed to keep us to a point that the Bulls just completely suffocated Glasgow. That when we were looking at the stats, I thought it was quite interesting that Territory was what, 51-49-ish, or 59-41. I thought it had been much higher in the Bulls' favor based on the second half alone, that we did not
mm.
get out of our second half that often. So I think he's got the Bulls. They're still really physical, but playing a bit smarter. It's not easy suffocating a defense and just by physical force. You have to do it cleverly. So I think it will be interesting to see how the Bulls go against Leinster, because last year they got absolutely pumped by Leinster, but I think under Ackerman the chances will be significantly better.
Interesting. If I give my opinion on the Bulls, I think that the style of rugby that they're playing now is better than it was under Jake. You could argue that they've got a better squad. So we'll need to, for me, I need to see how the final goes before I'm willing to call it. But I'll say he's definitely not worse than Jake. And I will also say that I don't think that the Bulls are at the peak at the moment. I think that I expect them to get better next season. Um, in terms of the actual performance on the day, players that played well, I thought the entire Bulls back three played very well. Aronson was very good. I'm really, really enjoying the second coming or third coming or fourth coming of Villy LaRue, whichever one we're on now. I thought he was finished and he's not, so I'm delighted to be wrong. Jacobs, like you rightly said, Mohammed, did his thing. He's like, well, I'm not Curtly Aronson, so I need to do something different. And he did something different, and I enjoyed that. Like I said, Seth McCanns came off the bench and had a great impact. To be honest, I didn't think Kanan Moody had a great game. I think he'll have great games in the future. In this particular one, I didn't think he was one of them. And like the bench and the pack of the Bulls, it took 35 minutes for the Bulls to get their first scrum penalty in this game. But then once that kind of dam broke, like that became a real strength, obviously, as we would have expected. And yeah, it's gutting for Edinburgh because it doesn't really tell the story of how good a team. Edinburgh, sorry, Glasgow. I'm gutted for Glasgow because it doesn't really tell the story of how good of a team they are. But I think when you look at the 15s that were on the field on the 70th minute, one was clearly stronger than the other. And there's, at the end of the day, the team that has the better players usually wins. And it's as simple as that. Anyway, we're going to go on and talk about the other semi-final in a moment. But before we do, just want to remind people that if you're enjoying what you are watching or listening to so far, please consider subscribing to the Global Gain Line on YouTube. This is the most diverse rugby podcasting platform that you will find anywhere in the world. There are weekly shows on Irish rugby, South African rugby, French rugby, how could I forget, as well as this URC show. There is sometimes an American show. There is sometimes a women's rugby show. At the moment, the Irish show is doing season reviews for every single province. We've already done Munster, already done Connacht. Ulster is next, Adam?
Yeah, also we're launching new provincial podcasts for next season as well. So this is the start of the provincial podcasting with the Munster one and the Connacht one and the Ulster one, which is hopefully getting recorded this week.
It's tremendously exciting, ladies and gentlemen, just in time for them not to play any more games. And
Well,
the Score of the Earth is even sometimes on this channel. So it's a bit of rugby from a bit of everywhere. And if that sounds like a bit of you, please consider subscribing. Am I the only one for whom Ethan is black at the moment?
yeah, don't know what's happened in Scotland, but
Ethan, are you there?
Ethan's just frozen on my side.
is he frozen? He's like he's
Mm.
as a box.
It's just a blank screen for me. Anyway, it's all right. There's no
Millennium pause. No, it's Gen Z. Sorry, my bad.
There's no Scottish teams playing in this next game anyway. So the other semi-final that was played was Leinster versus the Stormers. If you go by attendances, the two biggest teams in the URC. Now, attendance is a topic that we won't talk about this time, because it's just been dumped to death. But it is very online fan bases. I'll tell you that much. We'll come on to that later. Adam, Leinster won.
Yes.
Never in doubt?
Um, no, I thought that Leinster were particularly. I think the only doubt really came is when Andrew Porter came off and Alex Usanov came on. Not to Usanov is a very good player. I think, I do think though that when Porter came off, we were all sort of feeling the same way of like Stormers could have this scrum now. They could have that scrum. They could have the different aspects of the game. Losing a player like Porter is massive, but I did think that Leinster handled it very well. The first try by Rico was, I think it was like a really nice center play. And here, I think you mentioned on the group chat, which is a hot take. Do you want to say the hot take that you had on the
My
group chat?
hot take on Rico in this game, when he finished that try, I thought, can't remember the last time I saw Robbie Henshaw do anything like that.
Yeah.
And we've like a lot of people, including us, have hammered Rico, but I do think that he deserves to be in that starting 15 for Leinster at the moment.
Yeah, I think Rico's his like last bit of the season has been one that I think he's proving a lot of people wrong, much like myself, to put my hands up. He's still like that sort of nippy wee player that we always knew. And I think that first try really showed it. Bit of an opportunist. Yeah, you have 13 and you have a bit of a gap and a fallback that can cut across, and he still makes it and he still dots down. But yeah, I thought Leinster handled it pretty well. I thought that there was a lot of aspects of the game that for me watching with Leinster glasses on, I thought that there was a lot to work on still, but it was almost the fact that in the end, it was the Stormers' discipline that completely cost them, like completely cost them. And I didn't feel like there was any sort of footholds that the Stormers could have put in. I know that Stormers are a very active fan base online, but it's either I know one or the other here. Um, but I do feel like there was a lot of aspects that I think it was the first yellow card was grand. The second two, the one that was upgraded, that was a red. To speak out wrong about Ackerman's son after us complimenting Ackerman's dad, if I'm correct,
Mm.
it's one of those that once that red card came, I was just like, yeah, that's game. And Gibson Park's try was as Gibson Park try as you can get. I thought he was phenomenal this game. It was one of
Mm.
those that I do always think that when it comes to a player like Gibson Park, it's like, oh, the I wouldn't mind, and like it's not that I wouldn't mind, it's that I always think that oh shit, he's gonna slow down at some point. But I thought he really controlled this game really well. And I think as well there was the likes of James Lowe who had a pretty decent game, and the whole will they won't they saga of is he leaving or not, which from what I heard, I think he is leaving. But I think he's off to Japan, possibly. But yeah, it's one of those that I thought that Leinster played a really good game. I also think that they're also hitting a form that's really good for a final as well. Final on a Friday in Croke Park. pretty decent if they're not hitting any type of events in and around there. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I knew that there was a hurling final on around about the time of this game on that was happening in Dublin at Croke Park. So, hopefully they can fill out the stadium because, Croke Park rugby, it's lovely. I think it's just such a nice stadium to have it in as well. But
Mm.
fair play to Leinster. I think they were, I'm looking at the stats now, 66% possession, sounds about right. And a bit of trivia that I found out as well that I think you said like Leinster played Stormers 5 times before the semi-final, but 9 of their starters selected by Cullen this weekend and 3 of their bench have never taken on the South African team in the URC, which is bonkers.
Which
Like that was
is
the Planet Rugby one that I was just
yeah.
reading like earlier on. But it was one of those that I was just like, when you look at how much Leinster one rotate and two still function as a really good team, it shows in these games. The Porter injury wasn't affected because of how much experience Usmanov had. Samani came on and did a really did like probably the game-winning penalty towards the end. Uh
He's
towards the
what
end.
you want from a foreign import signing.
He is. He 100% is. I think he was like looking back on like well, as an Irish fan, and as an Ulster fan, it was such a random signing that it makes
Mm.
so much sense. Like when you look back on it now, you're like, that makes so much sense for Leinster. They've all got these tight heads, fair enough. But yeah, they did it and they did it effectively. It's an exciting time for them. And I think, the likes of that back line, I think Hugo Keenan also had a superb game as well.
He did.
He looked down and out by it was just after the second half. It looked like he was getting strapped up and then he just carried on.
He is the Irish Liam Williams. He's
Yeah,
never fit, but when he plays, you're like, oh my God, he's amazing. But then he's injured again.
he's phenomenal. I think it's one of those that there's a lot of these players that are looking at this Ireland squad that's coming up for the Nations Cup. There's a lot of them that need to make their statement known. I think they're still hurting from the Champions Cup, which, to be fair, before the comments come to me, they are a sporting team. If you lose a final and you've got another final coming up, at least you've got a bit of fire in your belly to make sure that you can actually push on to win the thing. Look at Bordeaux finishing eighth. They didn't have the fire in their belly. They
Mm.
they shrugged off. But I thought that they played a
Crazy.
very effective game against a very decent without Sasha Stormers team though. I think that was a big factor in it as well.
Stormers missing a few players down to injury, but Mohammed, what did you make of specifically the Stormers' effort in this game?
I think they gave it a good go. Their defense was really good. I think a lot of talk coming into it was how are they going to adapt to Jacques Nienaber's defense, and it was the other way around. They made it.
I'm sorry, that was a question that I meant to ask.
Yeah.
Mohammed, presumably all South Africans are delighted at the Jacques Nienaber vindication.
Yeah, we're
All Stormers
it's a,
fans would be delighted to see it.
it's a double-edged sword because I did speak to in person to some Stormers supporters in the week saying like, you think we can get Jacques? You think you can sign him up? But now, yeah, Jacques on his way to the final. But of course, if they lose the final, then the knives are going to be out again, and then Adam and everybody else are going to be like, get the hell out.
Yes,
Uh,
specifically Adam is going to be going for Jacques Nienaber if Leinster
exactly.
lose.
So
I'll go right to his door and ding dong. Hello.
I thought Ireland was supposed to be a safe country. Anyway, so yeah, Stormers at the beginning, it was Leinster attack, and then Stormers were like their defense was really good. We were talking like all season about Stormers attack being sort of incoherent and relying on moments of brilliance from their very talented backline players. And I think Adam pointed out very astutely that discipline, yes, the last yellow card was somewhat dubious, but discipline, like I mean, we're not there in the moment, and things happen super fast when you play like just competitive sports, be it like touch rugby or 15s rugby or club rugby. In the moment when the ball's coming across, you have to decide, can I catch this ball? And when the ball goes past you, think to yourself, oh, I could have actually intercepted and ran the other way. And speaking of running the other way, Hugo Keenan running down Imad Khan. There was so many key moments in this game. That was insane. In the build up, I was saying on the Friday bit of an animals episode, I said like Hugo Keenan returned that he didn't necessarily set the world alight for me in his return back to Leinster, but in this game he came completely alive. Um Yeah, and then like obviously, unfortunately, Ron Ackerman left the Lions years ago, played in England for a long time. And yes, he was playing in the Pring, but he did learn some stuff. And he came back and he was a more rounded player and he played well for the Stormers at the beginning of the season, got injured for a substantial amount of time. But that incident really, like, the game was at a knife edge at that point, and that really burst the balloon. And then on top of it, Sama Murat tries to sort of do a keep up with a dude standing across from him, and then the referee perceiving it as him being able to see with his eyes closed. And you
Well,
know,
okay.
it falls. You got to make your own luck. So um, annoying. Like a lot of Storm supporters have told me, like this game should never have been in front of 5 people in Dublin. It should actually have been in front of 51,000 people in Cape Town if the Stormers hadn't sort of fluffed their lines toward the end of the season. But yeah, look, very young fly off scrum off starting combo. So they played reasonably well. I mean, Imad Khan made one small mistake where his box kick went up and then sort of flew back in the same direction. And obviously, Matia at the beginning of the second half, where you really want to build your momentum, they got a penalty right in the middle, and he didn't find touch. But these things happen, and in the broader scheme of things, Leinster were the better team, and they won on the day.
I agree. I mean, let's talk about the yellow cards to Murat first, because I mean, first, like the other thing that I'll say, and I posted this on Twitter earlier, is that I've seen that clear out go around a lot on socials. The one where Paul de Villiers said it was in for the side and Holly says no, and people losing their minds over that. Guys, if we're going to lose our minds over Leinster ruck entries, just switch your device off now, because we're not going to get anywhere if people losing their mind over Leinster ruck entries. Okay, that I could show you probably 10 from the same game worse than that, right? So calm down on that one. That one is not worth getting upset about, Frank, in my opinion. The Murat one. So I think for me, I can see why it's controversial, because Holly has said he knows what he's doing. It's a deliberate act, etc., etc. And I can see you can debate it saying that he knows what he's doing because the other angle shows that he's not looking at Gibson Park when he does it. However, the things that I would say that to argue the other way is that, firstly, when the TMO has called it in, because Holly hasn't done it in real time, the TMO's called it in, and the TMO has said, Holly, I'm going to show you a deliberate act of cynical play. So the TMO has already made the decision. And in that situation, it's basically a formality, the review. The TMO, who is a match official, who is a referee, has made the decision already. So it's just a bit performative to show the angles and things and get the referee on the field to go, yes, I agree with you. And then that's it. That's how it works. So it's already framed in Holly's head like this is a deliberate act of foul play. She's watching it on the big screen in the stadium in Dublin, which is probably a bit grainy and things, etc., etc. And they show it from a certain angle, which it looks bad. Now, whether it's deliberate or not, you cannot lie on your back, stick your legs in the air, and kick the ball out of someone's hands. That is an illegal act. So it is at least a penalty every day of the week. I've seen some people saying that Murat was just trying to rock to get himself up. I don't go along with that. My reason for not going along with that is that Tom Clarkson was stood on top of him at the time. So he couldn't have gotten up. So my question to you, Salman Murat, is why did you have your legs in the air? Because no good was ever going to come of having your legs in the air. So whilst I think, yes, you can debate, did he do it deliberately? I think he's been dumb in that situation, is my opinion.
It's unfortunate because this is going to be his last act for the Stormers. He's departing now to join uh, Adam's friend Ronan O'Gara at La Rochelle. So, but look, he's a Cape Town guy. He's from Paul, so he'll be back with the Stormers eventually. But yeah, the Stormers are going to have to pick themselves up from this. Making a semi-final, they did reasonably well in the Champions Cup. I'm looking forward to seeing a very different sort of evolved Stormers next season as well.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to seeing the Stormers next season. In this specific game, my analogy to it is I think this was like a 1-0 of like almost exactly like a deflected shot goes in at some point in the second half, and the better team eventually wins. And I do think that Leinster were the better team. I think that the way that the Stormers set up was very much. I think the Stormers played like the inferior team. But what I mean by that is it was like in soccer when a team shows up away to, like in the Premier League, like a lower league team shows up to a Big Six team and sets up with like 10 men behind the ball. That's for me how the Stormers played in this game. Just really like low block it, defend, and then try and nick it with like an Imad Khan breakaway try, that kind of thing. Yes, the Stormers try that they did score was taken very well. But they weren't the aggressors for me. They didn't come out all guns blazing. They just tried to stay in it and nick a win. And it wasn't enough on the day. And the whole scrap in the tunnel thing, I think it's a bit embarrassing, to be honest.
Yeah, Thomas Clarkson, you made the list along with Josh Murphy and Luke Morgan.
Sean O'Brien was in the middle of it as well. I was just like, whoa.
I will say that John Dobson in the post-match interview, the 10-minute one on YouTube, he did sort of outline what you just said. Basically, that was around about their game plan, give or take. And Dobson has copped a lot of criticism throughout the season, but I was refreshed with his honesty and his forthrightness in that post-match interview. I mean, we've seen some very fairy and tense post-match interviews of late, Leo Cullen. So that was kind of nice, and I also look to see hopefully not just the player recruitment from next season and Frans Malherbe coming back from a long-term injury, but also I hope Dobson evolves his defense, not defense, his attack team. Maybe like whoever's running the attack there, or Davi Snyman. I said Davi Soron one time. Davi Soron coached the junior box years ago. I don't know where he is these days, but I'm looking also to seeing a more coherent attack from Stormers next season.
I agree. Ethan, any thoughts on this one?
I feel Leinster, as you say, were the better team. Stormers probably could have clinched it at the end, but I thought both of their yellow cards were incredibly dumb. Like the clear out, that was that in my head that was probably a straight red for the last few years.
There's one thing that I will criticize Holly for is that she does just go off-field review for everything, and for me, I think that she should just brandish the red more.
Yeah, that was just straight red. And then I feel for the Stormers, they did well to keep it within a few points initially, and then after the yellow cards, it was what, 1913? Is that the margin? That, it wasn't a complete blowout. That is what, 2 yellow cards and then eventually that red card in the Aviva against Leinster in a semi-final. That's actually a pretty decent margin.
Stormers, the most penalised team in the URC for foul play, and also the most penalised team in the URC for back chat this season.
Maybe they should have a podcast. I don't know.
So, yeah. So I think, I don't know, because I think they made Leinster look human at times, and I do think they defended very well. And I think the Stormers' defence, I think with these, if you include these playoff games, the Stormers' defence is the best defence in the URC. So you can't knock that. And the set piece got on top as well. But going forward, I think they're lacking something. And you could say that they're lacking something because of Sashi, but I thought they've been lacking something when Sashi's been playing as well. So for me, I look forward to watching them next season though, with Colisi and Colby in there. I think they're going to look better with those players on the pitch, in my opinion. Although Paul de Villiers was very good, and I was surprised that Dobbo took him off.
That was also quite strange. A lot of people online thinking that, but we don't know. The coaching staff is thinking like his replacement's quite good as well. So his replacement tried to kill someone. Forget what I just said.
Okay, all right then. So let's look ahead to the final. Let's look ahead to the final now. So this exact same final that we had last year of Leinster versus Bulls. So my first question is this is to everybody. Are the two best teams in the final?
I
We're all
think one of them are.
yeah, I was going to say we're all thinking it, but we're just not we're
Yeah.
just not saying it.
I think I think one of them are. I, I think when you put the URC has been so tough to call this year, and the fact that it's the same final as last year, it's sort of like a it's one of those where it was like, oh, I would have loved the Glasgow Leinster final. However, the Bulls sneaking in, it creates even more story with, the final being the exact same. Glasgow have probably been one of the best teams. Well, they've finished the top. They finished the top of the league. They have been probably the best team in the URC. I, yeah, I don't think it's a difficult one. I'll let somebody else try
The
and
per-
weasel my way out of comments.
the permutations are so weird because this is the fifth final. We've always had at least one South African team in the finals. The first year it's Stormers Bulls. Second year it's Stormers Munster. Munster win. The third year Bulls Glasgow, and then fourth year it's Leinster Bulls, and now again Leinster Bulls. So it's always a South African team, but yet we've only won it once. This is the fourth time the Bulls are in the final. So weirdly, there's no narrative of you better get it done this time. Um, because it like this is they're playing away. This is the second time they're playing away in Europe, but they had two chances to win it in South Africa. Once at the Bull Ring in Pretoria.
That
So yeah,
that's a good question. Who is the pressure more on?
I wonder.
I
Um,
would say Leinster in terms of narrative around them. James Lowe's possible last game, ticket sales. They need to
I
ham
think
up
I froze.
something. Like they think they need to they need to ham up something. Like they need to give Leo Cullen a live mic in the next 2 weeks, just to be like he needs to say something to sell tickets here. Like it could be
Maybe
this.
don't give Leo Cullen the mic then. Maybe
No,
give
yeah, yeah, or
Sean
maybe give
O'Brien.
somebody
He'd
else.
be good. Give him the mic.
Yeah, but it's one of those where I feel like they need to. I think Leinster, without a trophy this season, there'd be serious, serious questions over that coaching ticket. But with a trophy, without that Champions Cup, it makes it seem way much better because at least it's a league. They've won a league. They can win the URC 2 times in a row. They don't have Jordy Barrett this time. They've got Rico. Look at how good Rico was in the last 3 games. It was one of those where yeah, I think the pressure's in Leinster's court. And much like I would say the pressure would have been on Glasgow against the Bulls, because they were favourites.
Mm.
And we could see how that reaction came, Andre Pollard doesn't need the pressure to miss 11 points in the kicks, but can still win a game, you know what I mean? It's mad.
Mohammed, you don't think there's more pressure on the Bulls? Third final in a row. This time they've got Andre Pollard.
I wonder. Not being a Bull support, but I would think so. So many permutations. I just want them to get it done this time. I think they've got a good shot. Yeah. Slightly. But I mean, like Leinster, it's at the risk of getting the comment section upset. Leinster are giving like very Man City because like Man City, if they win the league, if they win the EPL and they don't win the Champions League, they seem deflated. And Leinster didn't necessarily celebrate that much last season. So whereas if the Bulls win this in Dublin, they're gonna go boss, as they say in Afrikaans.
Ethan, who's got the most pressure?
I feel Leinster that even if Leinster wins it, as I said in the chat, at some point I can't remember, something's rotten in the state of Leinster, and it's trying to figure out what it is. That yes, they got to the Champions Cup final, which the fact that they basically phoned it in, kind of fell upwards in the best way possible, still got to a final. Um, any other team would have gotten beaten by Bordeaux, but it's just, why wasn't Leinster performing better? Questions over, the public kind of spat with Nina Bar that obviously something's not working there. You had Rico Ioane and that wasn't quite clicking. It seems quite a lot of desperate things and nothing, they're trying different things. Nina Aber's a brilliant coach. He's won the World Cups twice. Rico Ioane, great All Black at his best. It's just, and when they've gone to Leinster, nothing's clicked with them as well as it should have. So
Hmm.
even if they do win the URC, I'm worried it'll be like last year, where it kind of like puts wallpaper over the moldy wall. That mold's
Yeah.
still underneath. That they need to try and figure out what the problem is and get back on form.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that analogy in the sense that there is something. I think it might just be Irish rugby in general that there's something like you look at the best team, and if the best team has something wrong, the way that the Irish provinces work, then there must be something wrong in all the other provinces. But I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Ethan, with that analogy, and also, you know, how many URCs can you actually paper over the cracks for not having, well, with the spat and with some things not clicking with the injury crisis as well. There definitely has been something that is going on, like, well, with the very public, well, not very public, sort of hush hush about James Lowe not being happy with being offered a 2-year contract. No, not being happy with being offered a 1-year contract. He wanted a 2-year contract to retire. That's still not being sort of dealt with, and nothing really said in the Leinster channels about this is going to be his last game. Nothing's been said. Nothing's been set up into this run up in the semi final. Nothing got said in the quarterfinal. Like, it could have easily been his last game on the weekend there. We wouldn't have known until he probably would have announced it. So there's something sour there. There's something definitely odd going happening. I think more within the IRFU as well than Leinster in general.
I think to answer my own question, I think that there is more pressure on Leinster just. I think there will be a lot of chat about the Bulls if they do lose a third final in a row, fourth final in 5 years. But I think people will excuse it enough of, oh, it's away to Leinster. Ackers is only in his first season, etc., etc. So to answer my first question of, are the two best teams in it? I think the two best squads are in it. I think that Glasgow's first 15 can stand up to these two. But I think that the squad as a whole, these are the two strongest squads. And I think, back-to-back finals proves that, I would like to think. I think if the Stormers had beat Leinster and this final was in Cape Town, I would say there was more pressure on the Bulls. Because I think that the way that the two teams have been trending over the last few games, the Bulls were in better form than the Stormers. And there would have been, played in South Africa, there would have been more pressure on the Bulls to win it, in my opinion. Whereas now, I think you can say that there's more pressure on Leinster because I think that the fallout of Leinster losing it could be huge. And like you guys kind of allude to, it could be a blessing in disguise in that it could kind of pull out everything that needs to be pulled out. Whereas if they win it, they can go, we got to a Champions Cup final and we won the league, so everything's fine, that kind of a thing. So that's where I am. So what do we think is going to happen? If we accept the paradigm of Leinster are favourites, because it's Leinster playing in Dublin, how do the Bulls win this, Mohammed?
Playing the same way they did this week, keeping it tight, bullying, being very physical, being dynamic when you can. The thing that I kind of annoys me about South African teams is that our scrum halves only box kick up and under, whereas like other teams, including like Welsh teams and Scottish teams, French teams, English teams, they have like more variations. So I want to see a bit more of that. It was like when they set up, the opposition needs to think, oh, is this guy trying to kick a 50-22 or is it going to be a box kick and that type of thing. Um, it's early days. We don't see the squads, but there's no major injuries from either squad, and they both have very good depth in terms of squad composure. Away from home, I think Pollard will kick more accurately. I think that was just an anomaly. Um, and yeah, they will they will use some of their new flashy backline moves when it's actually needed. Um, do they have enough to sort of counter the Jacques Nienaber defense? Or um, well, what was their result against Leinster earlier this season? They played in Pretoria. They beat them.
Mm.
Um, yeah, more the same from the Bulls, but like a bit more composure in key moments. And yeah, they're very much in this game. It's we're also going to remember the Lions stayed over in Europe when they had another European game. So in the next few days, we're going to find out if the Bulls stay over
I
or not.
think
Are they
they've
going to
got to
fly
come
back?
back. They've got to go
And they
back
come
for
back
me.
because of the 2 week thing. And then they'll fly back again and then to
I don't
Dublin.
know how the Lions did the maths on that, to be honest. I don't know how
Mm.
they managed to figure it out to be cheaper to stay in Dublin for 2 weeks than to fly back to Johannesburg. I don't, because it
My
must
thinking,
cost at least €300 a day per person to stay.
yeah, my understanding it wasn't the cost that they were thinking of. They were thinking of we're going to save these guys the flight to and fro. And it didn't work out, so we'll have to see how
That
that
didn't
turns out.
work.
Not at all, because people thought they were in the pub. Um, well, a lot of that was through bad kicking in that game, but we've gone over that game before, so there's that aspect as well. Yeah, the Bulls. If this final was next week, I'd give Bulls less of a chance. But it's in 2 weeks' time, and it's on a Friday night. Interestingly enough, I didn't know that. The
Weird.
policeman Ben posted it, but
Yeah.
it doesn't. It works out for us as South African supporters because then we get to watch the Bulls beat Leinster on a Friday night, and then on Saturday we watch South Africa versus Barbarians, and then South Africa A versus Zimbabwe.
Yes, looking forward to that. I think that for the Bulls to beat Leinster, it's not analysis to say that the Bulls have a better set piece. Mind you, I think people massively over egg how weak Leinster's scrum is. Yes, they've lost a few props to injuries and things, but if you check the stats, it's not actually that bad, and it hasn't been all season. And like we saw in the Toulon game in the quarterfinal, everyone was like, "Oh, Toulon are going to take them to the cleaners," and they didn't. So I don't think Leinster's scrum is that bad. I think that, like you said, Mohammed, the Bulls need to do what they did in the second half against, or in the third quarter against Glasgow. I think they need to be direct. I think they need to go up the middle. I think Villy Leroux needs to throw some sexy passes. I think Pollard needs to kick his goals. And the thing that the Bulls can do that the Stormers can't is that they can strike from deep. They score quickly and they can score from far out. That's something Leinster can't do either. Leinster don't score from distance. Leinster score from close. The Bulls can score from distance, and they don't need as much territory or as many opportunities to score as Leinster and the Stormers do. Now, the thing that the Bulls can't do that the Stormers can do is their defense isn't as good. But it only needs to be good in one game, and that game is next week. So I do think Leinster are favourites. And if you look at, I've had a look at a lot of the stats. The Leinster are on top in most of them, but I think if the Bulls can hold them off and frustrate them in attack, they have got a better chance of. I don't want to call it a smash and grab because I don't think that's fair. But they've got a better chance of being able to convert limited opportunities than the Stormers did. And actually, if you look at how the Bulls have been playing lately with their offloading game, it is a little bit French. It is a bit French looking. And we saw what UBB did to Leinster. So I think I'm not going to lie to you guys. I think the Bulls have comfortably a better pack than UBB. Comfortably a better pack than UBB, in my opinion. Just not as good as a backline. But UBB is arguably the best backline in club rugby. So if I'm the Bulls, I'm studying the UBB game and taking ideas from that. That's what I would be doing.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Take away the 30-degree heat as well. The 35-degree. I think I agree in that sense, but I do think that, you do mention the scrum, but I do have to say that, losing Andrew Porter, it's going to be a very keep an eye on if he's fit or not. I think that's an also like losing a player like that and looking at the backup. Yes, I know Jerry Caher is a really good player. He's off the Connacht next season. Uzunov did a very good job as well. I think there's like little moments of this game that needs to be decided by key players, and I feel like Gibson Park is that key player. And if the Bulls were to win it, it'd be how to get the ball out of Gibson Park's hand and into whoever's starting at fly half. Like you
I
want,
think it's got to be Prendergast.
yeah, it's. I think by the way that the season's gone, it has to be Prendergast. Like I think
His passing is he's the best passer, and
he is.
that's what tens are for.
Yeah, he's the best passer, and I do think that his sort of revival this season has been, well, at the end of the season has been particularly nice to watch as well, because he's showing that the pressure, he understands his weaknesses in his games. That's why I think sometimes he gets caught out on the wing a little bit. However, it's just, protecting him from the pack coming in those channels anyway. So it has to be Prendergast, but it's just how, you can look at like a very good scrum half, like a very good fly half with one of the best nines in the world next to you. It's how you can try and almost, the way that Bordeaux almost did was sort of neutralize him and make him quiet. And that's how probably the key to beating Leinster in that sense. But saying that though, I think with Leinster's form in Dublin 2 weeks away, it's going to be a URC
Although
in
Sam
Leinster's favor.
didn't play against Bordeaux, he was in the stands. They went with the
Maybe,
other
maybe,
flyers.
maybe that was the key. That could be the shock thumbnail. Everybody looks shocked.
Yeah.
But they do need to. I feel like Leinster do have a lot of players departing. We're gonna find out soon. I reckon it's gonna be this week. Surely it's gonna be this week when we find out who's departing. You've got the likes of Luke McGrath, a stalwart for Leinster, departing. You've got a few of them as well that like Jerry Caher, Frawley. You've got just it seems like they've got a pretty big shake-up. But I think for them's sake and the likes of Lowe as well, if he does go, I think he is. You do like as an Irish provincial fan. I know I joke about Leinster. It'd be nice to see him go with that type of trophy. I think it
Mm,
would just be nice. It would be somewhat poetic as well for him.
mm. Ethan, give me a head, not hearts, for this
I,
game.
f- I feel on paper, if Leinster would be the favourites, I don't think it would be as big a gap as it was last year. But I think for the Bulls to win it, they need to get quite a lot right. So, for example, when they lost Pollard to the yellow card yesterday, the Bulls, you could see that really affect the Bulls. That when they lost, is it Nokia?
Yeah.
Yeah. The Bull, the Bulls scored during that period. They won
By
that.
the way, I know I say this all the time. Norkia is in my amongst my favorite South African players. I think he is the best South African lock, which I know is controversial,
Yeah.
but it's just what I think. Anyway, sorry, back to you,
But
Ethan.
yeah. The fact, as you're saying, that actually helps that he's a very good player, and it ties into the Bulls' place of being, very physical. The Bulls won that 7-0 to Glasgow, um, whereas when they lost Pollard, it was kind of like headless chicken level of panic. That Glasgow were ruthless in that period. That they scored very quickly twice with Kyle Stein, and that they did collect themselves after, but you could see the difference in how losing Pollard versus Nokia.
Hmm.
So they do need to keep Pollard on the pitch.
Hmm. No, I agree. All right. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We've predicted the game. We've reviewed the games. One more to go. We're not going to be here next week because there's no games. So we've got a Sunday night off. But in the meantime, that just leaves me to say thank you very much to Irish Adam, South African Mohammed, and Scottish Ethan.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from me. For the purposes of this podcast, have been Welsh you. Enjoy your rugby, and I hope that everybody's team wins. Bye.